just before I start, I'd just like to make it clear that there are quite a few links to different tools and quite a few images included in the presentation. Don't worry too much about making notes. At the end of the presentation, I'll give you a link to the presentation so you will have the complete presentation yourself, and you'll be able to check out and go back through it and check all those links, okay? So that's first thing. Okay, now just moving on. Okay, I won't bother too much with this slide. I've already had a great introduction from Laxman. Just like to say, if you want to check out some of the things that I do later on, you can go along the connections to my different social media presence here at the bottom, and that will kind of show you some of the things that I do and some of the things that I do for free. So if you're interested in following this up and getting more information about any of the things that I've mentioned, do check out my social media links where I share a lot of different information. Okay, well, what I'd actually like to start with is a question for you. I'd just like to know what your teaching context is at the moment. And if you have a mobile phone handy with a QR code scanner on, it would be good if you could scan the QR code, and there you'll get a questionnaire, which looks a little bit like this, and just tick the ones that apply to your teaching context at the moment. I'll also share this link through the chat. So if you haven't got a mobile phone handy, click the link in the chat and you'll be able to submit your responses. So just click on the ones which apply to you, then click on submit at the bottom, and we'll all be able to see those together, just so that we can get some idea of people's teaching contexts at the moment. So are any of you already teaching with a remote platform like Zoom? Are you teaching online? You know, make your choice there. And we'll see, get a percentage of what people are doing. You should be able to see this updating on the screen as well. So you should be able to compare the kinds of things that you're doing with what others are doing. You can also click more than one if you're doing one of those, more than one of those. So it's looking like about 45% of us are actually teaching remotely using Zoom already. So that's great. You know, some things, about 20% teaching online asynchronously, about 25% sending students assignments, and that's you know, that's also good. And there's even a percentage of us that are still teaching in the physical classroom. Okay, that's interesting context for me to know about in terms of, you know, how I address this talk as well. I'm going to give you another quick question, if you can be patient with me. There's another one of these QR codes here. Again, I'd just like to know what your biggest challenge is at the moment. Well, what do you feel is your biggest challenge that you're facing? If you can, again, I'll pass you the link to that and through chat. If you haven't got your if you haven't got a QR code scanner handy, links going through chat. Link doesn't want to go through chat. Come on. Yeah, link's just gone through chat to that questionnaire. So if you'd like to, if you'd also like to fill that one in, that would be very handy. And I just need to find my presentation again now. There it is. Or if you're in Mentimeter, you can just click. Say your biggest challenge. I'll just give you. Yeah, that's, as you can see, lots of things starting to materialize. Students' active participation, that's a big problem, especially if you're using Zoom and you're not used to using breakout rooms. Internet problem and untrained teachers, network connections, yes. Controlling assistant participant students. Yeah. So some interesting responses coming through there. Unable to include all my students, yeah. Parents and students' motivation, yeah, that's very interesting. Okay. hopefully we'll be able to deal with some of those. So in this talk, what I want to look at is basically some paradigms, briefly, traditional paradigms and how those are being impacted in the post-COVID era, although we're not yet there, are we, in terms of things being post-COVID. I'd also look at something that I call document, device and delivery. So three things that we really need to consider when we're creating our courses, course materials, and thinking about how we'll deliver learning. And then I'll look at some course creation tools that we can use to develop our own courses for learners in different contexts. Course delivery tools, so some alternatives to Zoom, especially if you're working in a sort of low context, low connectivity area, a few student tools and some resources links and things like that. Okay, so that's what I'd like to try and cover in this section. Let's briefly look at traditional models. And this is a kind of traditional model of blended learning. And it's something that you might have been using in the pre-COVID era. And traditionally, our students our courses have been delivered in the classroom face-to-face. And many of us have supplemented our classroom by giving students who can do it and who do have access things to do online. Okay, so that's the sort of simplest model. It was originally known as a supplemental model, and it's the first model that I used when I was teaching. I was teaching face-to-face courses, and I built a little virtual environment and allowed my students to share assignments there, and I would upload assignments there too. So that's kind of more of a traditional model. A more modern blended learning model is the flipped learning model, and that kind of reversed that process. So our core content started to be delivered online through with the flipped learning approach, and then so things like grammar videos and grammar study could be done online, and then students could come to class and do project work and group work to actually work with the language and sort of build their ability to use it. And that's been a more modern structured model, and a very good one, particularly for language learning, assuming that our students do actually do their online coursework and are prepared when they turn up for their language class to use that language. But that's a great model when it works. In the post-COVID era though, we're now being offered a lot of new possibilities, and there are not a lot of different things to think about. For example, we still have our asynchronous learning, and that can be something that's very useful, particularly for students, who can't come to the classroom and who can't come to the remote classroom. But we do also have this alternative of the remote classroom where students can get together and use language, particularly if we're using that flipped model and we've prepared them with the language before they come to the remote classroom, then we can get them into breakout rooms and using the language. There is still potential for an element of face-to-face, which will still be there in the post-COVID era. Once this pandemic is over, students will be coming back to class. But there's also, this physical face-to-face and connected model as well, in that, we can sort of deliver materials to students' mobile phones, which they can use either in the classroom or on the bus on the way to class or wherever they are at home. So there are lots of different alternative models there too. Okay, so those are some different possibilities. In terms of which of those possibilities we can deliver for our students, there are three things that we really need to take into consideration in terms of what's possible for our students. And this is the stage at which I define as document, device, and delivery. And these three different things we need to consider. Delivery is maybe one of the first things that we need to consider. We need to think about, what's the delivery mechanism? If our students can't come into the classroom, how do we get the learning to them? How do we deliver content? How do we create interaction with students and with teachers? So in the first context, if students have good fast broadband connectivity, it's much less of a problem. We can do things like this, like remote learning, and produce online courses for them. That's not such a problem. We can give them a very rich experience. At the next level, if they've only got intermittent connectivity, then that becomes much more difficult. But it's still possible. Maybe we can't give them a live learning experience in a platform like Zoom, but maybe there are still ways we can reach them, whether it's through an app or through mobile phone, or delivering materials, through an online platform of some kind. There is another alternative for students that have mobile phones as well that doesn't require internet access, but does enable us to create a network. And this is a technology called Mesh. It's a technology that's not used very much, but it is a technology that exists on most mobile phones and internet capable devices. It's a technology that enables us to create networks using the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, even when our students don't have an internet connection. So there is a possibility there, and I'll look at a technology that we can use to exploit that, so that we can create local networks. So any student or teacher who's within 100 meters of each other is capable of delivering some kind of learning materials that are digital to other students. And that's quite an interesting one, because that means that if we have communities that are a long way away from us, if we have one person, one teacher who has an internet connection, they are able to download materials which they can then share locally without having to meet people face to face through this mesh technology. One of the other alternatives where there is absolutely no connectivity are things like portable media, things like USB cards or SD cards, which we can slot into a phone. There are alternatives for producing interactive digital materials that we can give to our students on an SD card or a USB card that enables them to still keep learning. Okay, so our method of delivery and what our students have access to is very important to consider those ones first. On the next level up, I think we can look at what devices they have, whether they have only have a mobile phone, whether they only have a computer, or whether they have access to some kind of tablet. Thinking about the device can help us decide how we will deliver the material and what form that material will take. And then the next step, I think, is thinking about document type and what each document type that we can deliver to them is capable of. So, for example, the most traditional document type that most teachers have used is the print-friendly one. So PDFs and things like Microsoft Word. It's very easy to deliver these, to put these onto a USB stick or an SD card, deliver to them to students, and they can put them into their phone or their laptop and use those materials. Those documents aren't very interactive, and they're not media rich, but we can deliver some kind of learning using those kind of print-friendly documents. At the next level, there are things like web pages and HTML5 web pages. And HTML5 web pages are very interactive. They're capable of developing materials that the students can interact with. They can get some instant feedback from them, and do interactive exercises. They can be media rich. They can include audio and video. And I'll show you some examples of those. Those are usually developed online or delivered online and usually require internet access, but there are tools that can enable you to export them and deliver them through an SD card or a USB stick. And that can give the user a very rich experience, and much richer than the kinds of print-friendly documents. Lastly, there's something called ebooks, which I'm sure you've all heard of, and they use a format called EPUB and a newer format called EPUB 3. These will run on most tablets, mobile phones, or computers, but they do require an e-book reader software. The EPUB 3 format, which is the more modern one, also enables some delivery of rich media and interaction, but they can be a little bit temperamental, and I'll show you some examples of those later. So as we go through the presentation and we look at some of the different tools, you'll see in the top corner that I've included this as a kind of rubric which tells you a little bit about the tool and what it's capable of and how it's capable of delivering. So I'll move on to some tools and some examples. And I'll start with tools that are capable of creating courses or complete courses and give you some examples of some of the things that I've done. I'll start with one of my favorites, which is Genially, and this is a tool for creating HTML5, which is very rich and interactive and dynamic. So that means that students can interact with the materials, they can get feedback after they complete tasks, they can have video in them, they can have audio in them, they can have icons and images, and they're ideal for this remote learning classroom. And in fact, the presentation that you're watching now is an HTML5 presentation which was built using Genially, which is a free tool. But these can also be shared with students because they're online. We can sort of give them links to them and they can share and manipulate them. It doesn't just have to be a passive process of watching a presentation. The other good thing about Genially is that it does also enable teachers to download these interactive presentations and retain most of the interactivity, which means that we can put these onto these USB sticks and portable drives and send them to our students. So if students don't have any connectivity, we can still share presentations like this with them, and they will work on any of these devices, as the rubric shows. It's capable of delivering HTML5, but it can also be exported as a PDF format, although that loses the interactivity. So this is a very useful tool and quite a simple one for creating, very dynamic and rich learning materials for students. If you look at the picture over here, it gives you some examples of the kind of things that it can produce. We can produce video presentations like this, infographics, and different kinds of interactive learning objects. So that's if you click on the link here when you get the presentation, it will take you to the website and you can have a look at that and try to use it if you want to and see some examples of what it can produce. I can click it now just to show you quickly some examples, and I'll show you some of my own. Let's see if this will open. Yes, so this is the material that I've designed using Genially, and there's a great section on inspiration where you can get some inspiration you can see what other teachers have produced. There are different sorts of presentations that you can click through to see what's been produced with these. And you can sort of copy some of those. Go back to my creations. If I just show you a quick one and how to do it. This is an example of one that I'm working on at the moment. There's an interface here. It has the different pages of the presentations. So I can just click to work on a different page, and I can easily add text from here. I can add images, and it has a huge repository of images that are royalty free, so we can use them copyright free. So if I do a quick search on the pool, my interface is slowing down, and I can drag on different icons and different things to create interaction there. So sorry about that, but that's not opening at the moment. So that's Genially, and I can create these very rich HTML5 learning experiences. This is an example of one that I created. I created a lesson based around a conversation about mobile phones. What I do is I always add this QR code to the lesson, to the first slide of the lesson, so that my students can scan that onto their mobile phone, and then they can follow the lesson very easily on their mobile phone. You know, that's instantly connects them to the slides, and that can be very useful, especially if we're using slides in breakout rooms. This is an example of one of the activities. It's a listening activity about a young woman talking about how she uses her phone and how she uses it for conversation and social media. And as you can see, my listening task is built in there. So, you know, my students can do these listening activities while they're in the remote classroom. So there's an example of the audio. There's some questions here to help them. And again, you know, I've got this alternative button so that, you know, if my students want to scan the audio onto their mobile phone, they can scan it and listen to it independently on their phone, or I can pass them a link to the audio. Ooh, that's not connecting. Where they can get a link and listen to it there. There's also, you know, one of the other nice things that I can do with this is that I can use another tool, which I'll show you in a minute, to build interaction into these. So this one I've built in some vocabulary, an interactive vocabulary activity, so students can learn some of the vocabulary that they'll need for the tape to understand the tape script, and they can check on that. Show solution, retry. So, you know, that's a great tool for building interactivity into these tasks that we give students within the remote classroom. And again, I've got a QR code there so they can scan that onto their phone, and that will work on their phone too. And I've built that interaction using a tool called H5P. One of the other great things about this technology is that we can embed video into it so that we can use video very easily in the remote classroom and combine that with tasks. And so what you're watching now is a video that's built into the HTML5, and you know, I can build this in with different activities to follow it up. So again, you know, I can make my lessons that much more engaging, you know, as long as I have the connectivity there. And again, I've got the QR code there so students can scan it onto their phone if they want to watch it on their phone. And that can save a little bit of connectivity for the remote classroom. As I said, I use another technology called H5P, and this is what I use to build the interactive activities within the platform. H5P is great because again, it's open source and it's free. So if you have a WordPress site or you have a Moodle site, you can plug it into that site and build activities there for free, and it won't cost anything. It builds HTML5 learning objects, which are suitable for phones and for tablets, which is great. So it means that we'll run on anything as well as the computer. So there's this compatibility there. But it does require internet access. It doesn't always require fast broadband, but if your students have some limited connectivity, then they should be able to use it. And again, it works with HTML, HTML5, and works in the web browser. So it doesn't require any specific variety downloads of software. There's a real great variety of activities that it can create, which are very marvelous. It can have a quick look here at all the different kinds of interactions you can create. It's very easy to learn. You can add activities that involve recording audio, filling in blanks, matching exercises, finding the words, hotspots. It's very good for building video-based activities as well, you know, and it can build them in and build video interaction into the actual video itself. I'll just mute that. So for example, when students are watching a video and they get little interactive buttons where they can go and do activities to check their understanding as they watch. So this makes, you know, adding video to courses is much more interactive and much more engaging. So check strawberries, blueberries. Okay, I've got that right. So as students watch through, and listen to this, they have various different exercises that they can do as they move through the video. So some very nice kinds of activity types there. And as I said, H5P is quite easy to use and quick to learn. You don't need any kind of coding expertise, and there are examples given to you as well. And these kinds of activities are great because they can give students immediate feedback. This is an example that I built into HTML, into my Genially presentation, and it's a dictation activity, so students can listen to sentences and so example of a dictation activity, and students can check and they can find out, I've got 15 out of 100 points so far, so I can continue or retry that and do some more. So again, this is a great way to develop students' listening skills while they're working at home, and it can give them some immediate feedback. They don't have to be in the remote classroom when they do it, developing their listening skills quite effectively. And again, they can scan it onto their phone and do it on their phone if they want to. One of the video activities that I've built into one of my lessons here, again using a combination of Genially and H5P, there's a video here, and students watch the video and some have to create a summary of it. It's a nice video about a girl from Bangladesh who became a world champion kickboxer, and they watch, and as they watch, they try to assemble the summary of what they're watching to test and build comprehension, and they're getting some feedback and a score on that all the time. So a nice way of building some rich interactive activities. There are lots of different activity types that it can build, and if you want to sort of check out some of the others, by all means have a look through the presentation later, click on some of these buttons and it will show you some of the alternatives. There are writing activities that give students immediate feedback as well. This one's based around sort of use of more complex lexis. So we'll score how well in the activity they have to describe a picture, and depending on how many complex words they use in their description, they will get some marks. So if they use rich, complex vocabulary, they can get up to 400 marks, and at the end they get shown a solution. So that's a way of developing students' writing and vocabulary use and getting some instant feedback without the teacher having to mark it all the time. It can also build these structured writing activities. So, students have to write in information based around different questions that you've set for them that gradually help them to build up the structure of their text. This one is a film review, and it asks for different aspects of the film. When they click on there, at the end, they create a document and they can download that document. And in that case, that's something that they send to the teacher for marking. So a number of different alternatives. Check those out later if you're interested in developing, online courses for your students that don't have to be in the remote classroom. If you're looking for something that can deliver materials that are totally connectivity free, then XeLearning is a very good tool. It was a tool that was developed. I'll start again. It was a tool that was developed by a British university, and it was developed for the development of online learning, which can be online or it can be delivered offline. So the materials that are produced by this can be deliver a number of different formats. It can produce EPUB3 format materials, which are interactive, or it can develop web-based materials. But either of these options can be put onto an SD card and used through mesh or used using with connectivity. So students don't have to have a connection to use the kind of materials produced by this. And this is free to download onto your computer, and you can start creating materials yourself using it. The interface looks a little bit like this, and there are, along the side here, there are a whole range of different interactive activities that you can create using this tool. And once you've created them, you can then export them as either web pages, which can be put into zip files and put onto drives, or uploaded to the internet, or you can export them as EPUB3, which is interactive. I'll just show you a quick example of one that I created some time ago. I used this for a project in East Africa. No, sorry, in West Africa, and to create some teacher training materials. And this is one of the units that was on error and correction. And you see you have a menu down the side here. There's the book cover. There's an introduction which goes through our learning goals, and it has a number of different sections. You know, you can, and it has some basic interaction. So you click multiple choice and you get some feedback. You can also add rich media to it, so you can put audio files into it and build interactive activities around that. I did a section on analysing errors, so students can listen to errors and then sort of try to decide what the type of error it is. And then sort of we had a section on error correction techniques, different techniques for correcting errors. And you know, we had to, there was a task for students to look at different errors and think about what error correction technique they would use. And then there's a little video of a teacher talking about how they would correct that error. So, you know, this is quite kind of media rich and interactive, but can still be delivered onto an SD card or a USB stick and run from there. So it doesn't require internet connectivity. And as I said, that was created using a tool called XeLearning, which is free to download and install on your computer. So that's quite an effective tool. So those were tools for course creation. Now I'd like just to have a look at a few quick tools for course delivery. And these are things that are alternatives to Zoom. And again, I've got my little rubric here that shows you how they can deliver. This is a platform called GoBrigade, and it's a very effective platform for delivering either webinars, which are straightforward lectures, or for smaller classrooms with breakout rooms. So you can choose a room, anything between the size of 4 people up to 400 people. So it could even accommodate something like the Zoom lecture that we're doing now. You can record sessions in it. You can add breakout rooms. You can have multiple presenters. And all of it is free. This was developed by a university in Brazil, and it's been made open to any educator who needs to use it. And it's very sort of rich. And this is what I use to give most of my presentations on and most of the webinars that I organize myself. You know, it's a very useful tool, free tool to use, and it's very user friendly for participants. When you get into the room, it actually looks very much like a room, and it has rows of seats, or it has tables with different tables around the room, and students just click on their chair. So it's easy to see who's there, and it has a very nice visual interface. So if you're looking for an alternative to Zoom that's free and simple to use, then, you know, by all means click on the button and check out GoBrigade. But as I said, it does require connectivity, good broadband connectivity. If you're looking for something that can be used to deliver lessons on the mobile phone, then Whatsup is a very good alternative, as long as your students have some intermittent access to the web, then they can use this to download materials that you can send them. And I guess there's probably quite a lot of you using this already. It's quite useful in that you can deliver lots of different types of learning there. You can send images or videos, audio clips, and you can create groups there so that you only have your students in the group, and send them different tasks that they can then return to you through the same means. It's quite nice as well because it's social. Students can chat with each other and interact with each other. But from my experience of using it with students, I would say think a couple of things to be careful of, and make sure your student groups aren't too big. If you go for large groups of students, it can become very chaotic. And also make sure you have a code of conduct. Give students a code of conduct that outlines how they should use the platform, what they should use it for and what they should not use it for, and so that they understand some rules of etiquette. This is remind them that the group is for learning and it's not just for social chat or sharing selfies of themselves. Although there could be a place for that, make sure that they know that all their interaction through it should be based around learning, and have a code of conduct that points out, what they should and shouldn't do. Because I have been in instances where people have shared something that's inappropriate, or people have become angry with other people, or the conversation has got away from learning and into things like politics and things like that. So potentially a great tool, can deliver learning to students. We can share different web pages with them if they have intermittent connectivity, and we can share audio and share video and set tasks for our students to do. And we can still get them to do asynchronous speaking activities there, record their voice. So I think that's well worth exploring if students don't have the connectivity to do something like Zoom or GoBrigade. Another alternative and something that I was talking about earlier, is this platform called Signal. And again, it works on a mobile phone or a tablet or a laptop computer, but it uses this technology called Mesh, so that if you have a teacher who's based a long way from the center where you're producing materials, and you want to deliver materials to the teacher who does have an internet connection, and he can then or she can then share them with students who aren't internet connected, who are local to them, then this is a technology you can use. So Signal will work on the technology called Mesh, which enables them to share and create networks with anyone who's within 100 meters of them. If there's someone 200 meters away from them, but there's someone in between who's only 100 meters away from them, it will also bounce materials across from them. So as long as your students are reasonably in the same kind of area within 100 meters, you can share materials with them, and they don't have to be face-to-face to do it. You can share different kinds of materials. It can share EPUBs or ebooks. You can share websites and links to websites, but you can also share print-friendly resources and lots of different kinds of files and folders of materials, sharing audios and sharing videos as well. As I said, only one person, the person receiving the material, needs to have an internet connection, or you could actually send the material to the person by USB stick or SD card, and then they could use Mesh to share it with the other people. So, it can really sort of connect up students who are local to each other and enable them to share and create a community without having internet access, just by using Bluetooth and wireless. So that's something well worth checking out, especially for those kind of communities that are a long way from having internet access. Just pushing on because I realize I'm running out of time. Another easy technology to use for students who only have intermittent internet access is QR codes. You can create QR codes for any materials, any digital materials, whether it's simple text or whether it's audio or video or links to the internet. You can put them on these QR codes onto paper and then just send the paper to your students. You can even put it in an envelope and send it to them. When your students receive it, they can scan the QR code and they can get them learning materials that way onto their device. And that's quite an easy way of delivering materials to students, you know, as long as they have some intermittent internet connectivity, and they can work through scanning the different QR codes and using them when they're ready to, when they're ready. I've used this myself in my own materials in different ways, and it's sort of helped me break up things like longer texts. So students, you know, produced materials that have the different QR codes. So this was a text that was broken up into 4 parts, and I can actually get students to do it as a split reading activity. So each one can share scan a different part using the QR code scanner on their phone, and then they can sort of get together in a breakout room in remote learning and compare what they've done. Or they could scan their different parts and interact through something like Whatsup and talk about the different parts and share what they've learned from it. So a great way of splitting up materials and getting them onto students' phones. Another thing that I've used it for is to produce role cards for breakout rooms, so that students can do role plays while they're doing remote learning. One of the biggest problems with things like Zoom and breakout rooms is as soon as you put students into the breakout room, they lose the presentation here and they don't see what's on your screen. So if you get them to scan the QR code and get their role play cards before they go into the breakout room, then when they're in the breakout room, they can just use their mobile phone to refer to them. And this sort of shows you the kind of the role cards that they have there. These are kind of interactive ones that I created using H5P. So they can scan these little interactive role cards onto their phone, and then when they go into breakout rooms, when they go into the breakout room, the material is ready and on their phone. So there's, for example, there I've got my role card. I can see Laxman, but I can't hear him. Okay, I'll try and finish very soon. Just a few tools for students. This is a nice one if you want to get them doing digital note-taking. They can just use this simple web page and they can take their notes there. My notes, their name, and then they can take their note to add notes here. If they want to, they can add YouTube videos or links to it, and then they click on publish, and they get a URL here which they can share through whether it's WhatsApp or whether it's through the chat or any media.
Nick, I was just saying you have 4 minutes left. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, great. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay,
I'll get it done. So there you are. Another thing that students can use, useful tool for creating audio, whether it's teachers or students. This is a simple tool where students can just record their voice either in the browser on their mobile phone or online. They just click the button, allow the microphone, record their voice, and once they're finished, they can share it very easily, either by sharing a link with you through WhatsApp or through chat or through a website, you know, and they've created that audio that you can then listen to. So you can set them speaking activities, they can record it and then just send you a link to listen to, and that saves shifting large audio files about. So that's something that you can use very easily. Last thing, something for the remote classroom is if you want to get students doing interactive writing activities or collaborative writing activities, you can use the rich text here. And what it does, it creates a virtual word pad for you, and then you can just share the link to it. So students can share the links to it with each other. And once they have that link, if you click on the link now, we can all write into that page. I think if there's 500 of us, it will probably crash, but we can all just start adding our names to it, adding contents, and we can use this for writing collaboratively. So you can put students in groups of 2 or 4, and they can start working together and doing collaborative writing, peer editing activities, and all that sort of thing. So that works well in the remote classroom. Or it can work asynchronously as well. I can see that lots of you are joining. I can see you're joining down the side, and as soon as you join, you should be able to click here and start working on the paper. If it gets to 500 of us, I'm pretty sure it's going to crash, but you know, it's a very useful tool for, and you should be able to edit each other's entries. So, you know, you could put a text in here with some mistakes in it, get students to correct them, that kind of thing. And that works well in the remote classroom. Students can access it from wherever they are. They could also print it up when they're finished and send it to you, or send a link to you rather than sending the file. So the last thing, you know, that's all I have to say. I will move on. I'll give you a link to a free book that I've written and a link to the presentation in a moment. But if you have any questions that you'd like me to answer, please scan the QR code and feed in the questions. I'll also give you the link to the question sheet, so you can add any questions you want here, and we'll all be able to see the questions together before I try and answer them, okay? So I'll just send that through the chat if I can get to the top of it. Send it to everyone. Okay, you should see the link coming through there in your chat. If you click on it, you can ask a question. Alternatively, if you scan the QR code, or you go to mentimeter.com and put in this code, this number code here, you can share questions with me, and I'll do my best to answer them in the sort of few minutes that we have left. I'll give you a few moments to do that, and I'll just push on. When you get the presentation, please also check out, there are some additional links to resources here. There are a number of resources. There's a site that I manage called Tools for Teachers and Learners, which has lots of different other tools which you might want to check out. I publish a monthly EdTech in the ELT newsletter, which is free. Please register and I'll send you regular updates. You can check out my blog, my publications, or follow me on Twitter. Just click on these and join when you have time. Or alternatively, there's a free book, a book that you can download for free if you click the link here and click on buy now and use this code.